Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into the world of AI agents. Things are moving fast.
They really are. It feels like every week there's something new.
Exactly. And we're specifically looking at how they might, completely change the game for creating daily news podcasts.
A really interesting angle.
Yeah, we've been digging through a load of recent articles, some research papers, expert takes all from the last few days, really.
Mm.
And our mission for this dive is to pull out the really key stuff. What are the big developments and what could they actually mean if you wanted to, say, use AI to generate a daily news podcast?
Right, separating the hype from the practical potential. It's important because these AI agents, they're becoming more than just concepts.
You mean they're actually being used now?
Well, yes, we're seeing a shift. They're moving from just experiments, sort of lab projects, into real production scale uses.
Yeah.
And they're fundamentally different.
How so? Different from like a regular chatbot.
Yeah, think of them as autonomous helpers. They don't just respond. They can strategize, make decisions, and, act on their own to get things done. They orchestrate tasks.
Okay, autonomous helpers. Let's connect that specifically to the daily news podcast idea. How could that autonomy play out?
Well, some of the sources we looked at suggest this could fundamentally change how the web even works. Imagine agents talking directly to other agents online.
Agent-to-agent communication. Wow.
Yeah. And think about what that means for news delivery. Could an AI agent, or maybe a team of them, handle the entire workflow for a daily podcast?
You mean from finding the stories, verifying them, maybe even writing the script?
And potentially producing the audio.
Mm.
It's a scenario that's starting to look less like science fiction. This idea of an agent-driven web, it really could transform how information flows.
So for our hypothetical daily news podcast, these agents could be out there constantly scanning, identifying the big stories, maybe fact-checking.
Exactly. Synthesizing information from multiple sources, constructing a narrative, maybe even managing the production queue. It's a huge potential shift.
Okay, but how feasible is that right now, or, in the near future? Can an individual or a small team start doing something like this?
That's where some interesting developments come in. One concept is building your own private knowledge base.
Private knowledge base.
Yeah, using something called cache augmented generation, or CAG. Tools like Qwen3, Llama, LangChain, they're often open source, allow you to basically build your own local AI system.
Local, so not relying on the big cloud APIs.
Right. You can feed it your own documents, specific web links, articles you trust, and then ask it questions based only on that information.
Ah, I see. So you could curate your own trusted news sources and have the AI generate summaries or answer questions just from those.
Precisely. It's a step towards creating a really personalized news briefing system, maybe even the backbone for a niche daily podcast, without sending your data out.
That sounds powerful, kind of democratizing access to this tech.
It really is. Imagine training an agent just on, say, local news sources or specific scientific journals and getting a tailored audio brief every day. It's more than aggregation. It's synthesis.
Okay, so that's one piece, making it personal and private. But what about the agent's ability to actually do the complex research needed for good news?
Good question. And that leads us to something like OpenAI's BrowseComp.
BrowseComp, what's that?
It's a new benchmark they've launched. It's specifically designed to test how good AI agents are at searching the web and, crucially, doing deep research.
Deep research, like finding obscure facts or connecting dots.
Exactly. The focus is on finding information that's difficult to locate, maybe tangled up across several different websites. It's about pushing the agents beyond just grabbing the first result.
Right, because real news often isn't just sitting on one page. You need to dig.
Precisely. So BrowseComp is trying to measure and drive progress in that ability. For an AI to create a good daily news podcast autonomously, it needs that investigative skill. It needs to handle complexity and conflicting info.
Okay, makes sense. So you have ways to personalize the knowledge base and benchmarks pushing for better research skills. What about the tools to actually build and deploy these agents for something like a news workflow?
Well, there are platforms emerging. Deep Agent from Abacus AI is getting quite a bit of attention.
Deep Agent, what's the buzz about?
It's being described by some as extremely capable. People are talking about its ability to handle research, yes, but also things like coding, generating dashboards, making presentations,
Quite versatile.
and automating tasks in tools many people use daily, like Slack or Gmail.
Huh.
They've also introduced a pro tier.
What does that add?
Things like database support, custom domains, more integrations. It suggests they're aiming for users who want to build more serious automated systems.
You could see how integrating database support might be useful for managing a large archive of news stories or sources for a podcast, maybe?
Absolutely. Platforms like Deep Agent show this integration of different skills, research, synthesis, automation, different output formats. It gives a glimpse of potentially very efficient news creation pipelines. It makes an AI-driven daily podcast feel more, well, more realistic.
And are there other major players in this space pushing the agent capabilities?
Definitely. Google's Gemini 2.5 Deep Agents are another significant development.
Gemini 2.5, what's the focus there?
They're positioning it as powerful but also cost-efficient. It has strong agentic reasoning, that ability to plan and execute tasks, and it can natively use tools like Google Search or run code.
Native tool use sounds important. Less clunky integration.
Potentially, yes. But the really eye-catching feature is the context window.
Ah, I've heard about this. It's huge, right?
1 million tokens, which means it can process and reason over a massive amount of information all at once, like entire books, long videos, huge code bases.
Wow. Okay, for a daily news podcast, that means it could potentially analyze a whole day's worth of news articles, maybe transcripts, reports.
All in one go, potentially. To understand the connections, the nuances, the emerging narratives across a vast data set, that ability to process information at scale is critical for staying on top of the daily news cycle.
So the tools seem to be getting really powerful, capable of handling the kind of complexity and volume needed for news?
The trajectory is certainly pointing that way. The combination of reasoning, tool use, and massive context windows is a potent mix for building intelligent agents that could tackle many parts of the news podcast process.
But with all this power and autonomy, we have to talk about the risks, right? Security must be a concern.
It absolutely is. Unit 42, Palo Alto Network's research team, put out a report specifically on this. They outline the top 10 security risks as AI agent autonomy increases.
Top 10 risks. Like what?
Things like the agents being tricked or manipulated, vulnerabilities in how they connect to tools or data, potential for misuse if compromised.
Lisa.
As they become more capable and connected, their attack surface grows.
So if you were building an AI agent to handle sensitive news gathering, you'd need to be incredibly careful about securing it.
No question, security needs to be baked in from the start, especially if these agents are interacting with the open internet or internal systems. It's a crucial consideration alongside the capabilities.
And beyond security, there are ethical questions too, aren't there? Bias in the models, for instance?
Yes, that's a persistent issue. We saw warnings, for example, from the Instagram co-founder about AI chatbots potentially being optimized for engagement over actual usefulness or truthfulness.
Which could be problematic for news.
Very. And the bias issue keeps cropping up. There was that example with ChatGPT generating racially coded language from a seemingly innocuous prompt about iguanas. It highlights how biases can creep in unexpectedly.
So even with all this potential for automation in news podcasting, there's a need for serious caution and presumably human oversight.
Definitely. Safeguards, transparency, ongoing evaluation, these are essential, especially when we're talking about systems that gather and disseminate information. The potential for misuse or unintended consequences is real.
Okay, so let's try and bring this together. It sounds like the pieces are falling into place for AI agents to potentially create daily news podcasts. We have improving research skills,
Platforms for building and integrating these agents,
ways to create personalized knowledge bases.
and incredible processing power with large context windows.
The capability seems to be emerging, even if it's still early days for widespread, reliable use in this specific way.
Exactly. The potential for efficiency, for personalization, even for uncovering insights humans might miss in the sheer volume of daily news is significant. The technology is rapidly making the creation part more feasible.
But tempered by the need for robust security and careful ethical considerations.
Absolutely critical. The power needs to be matched with responsibility.
So here's a final thought then, something for you listening to mull over. If, or perhaps when, we have daily news podcasts created entirely or almost entirely by AI agents, how does that change things?
Yeah, how does it change your relationship with the news? Does it make it more personalized, more efficient, or does something get lost?
What happens to the role of human journalists, editors, producers, and what new questions should we be asking ourselves as this technology keeps accelerating?
Lots to think about there.
Definitely. We encourage you to keep exploring these topics, maybe even try out some of the tools if you're technically inclined. Thanks for diving deep with us today.